And look, we had this discussion briefly, I think, on Friday off the air. Um, Understanding this is a sports betting show, right? It's a sports betting network, the BetQL network. But a lot of people still put plenty of time and money into fantasy football, especially in states where you don't have access to legal sports wagering. Some DFS stuff may be the way you have an opportunity to make some money. Your fantasy league may be your primary outlet during football season. Who knows? So definitely, we want to talk about what is the cornerstone position in non-PPR leagues anyway, or at least for a long time has been, and that's running back. And I guess when you start talking about running back, Corey, you start talking about a guy who's right there at the top of the board in Christian McCaffrey. And I don't know, is there anyone else even close to CMC's level who you consider, say, a top half of a first round or first round player worth taking off the board?
When it comes to the running back position, CMC is elite asset to have. Obviously, plays in the most fantasy friendly offense with the most fantasy friendly head coach in Shanahan, and he's a guy who dominates touches. And at one point last year, his anytime touchdown prop got all the way to minus 225. So that goes to show you what kind of nose for the goal line he has. So CMC is elite. He is the best. There is no other running back that I would take at 1-1. There's a couple other running backs I would take in the first round. But as far as the first player to go off the board, if I'm taking a running back, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. If I'm at 1-1 at any time in any of my drafts this year, I'm not going to get cute with it. I'm going to take Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. He's just, and even if you are in a PPR league, because of the dual threat nature of Christian McCaffrey, he's still a 1-1, I would think, right? In most leagues, if that's where you're
Yes.
going, that just, plus he's always a threat to score. It's not just about touches and carries and catches and yardage. He's always a threat to pop off. I mean, forget just a touchdown. Multiple touchdown games are always in the mix as well with McCaffrey.
Yeah, no, is a guy that can score you 30 to 35 fantasy points a game pretty regularly and consistently, especially if you're looking at a league, where you get a point per reception for the running back or the wide receiver. Listen, running backs that can catch the football out of the backfield really, really are in high demand in today's NFL. It's almost one of the things that you have to do. Now, one of the things that we do like about McCaffrey is, and this is what I would say when you're looking at running backs, the yards per carry is one thing, but in McCaffrey, what we like is 8 yards per reception. At one time in Carolina, it topped out at 9.3, but he has consistently been over 8 yards per catch. And what you'll notice about a lot of running backs, Chris, is they'll come out 7, 8 yards per catch, 8, 9 yards per catch early in their career. And then by the third or fourth season, they'll start to tail off. And that's normally a sign that the running back is going down. We haven't seen that with McCaffrey yet, or at least they're scheming him to where he's still an 8 yards a catch guy. That's an elite number for a running back. That's almost a first down every time you touch the ball, and the yards per carry still very high. Christian McCaffrey, the most dynamic fantasy asset at the running back position.
I would imagine Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson, maybe even Jonathan Taylor, all worth a look as well in the first round if you're looking running back. Or where does that break point maybe stand depending on PPR or non-PPR in that next level of backs? Because I keep seeing Hall and Bijan as sort of a 2 and 3 behind CMC, and then Jonathan Taylor close right behind them. And then you get a little bit of a break point, a little bit of a gap down to, say, the Saquons and Kyron Williams of the world.
Well, see, so let's start with Brees Hall, dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Even last year in a bad New York Jet offense, Brees Hall was able to put up numbers, making him one of the top fantasy running backs. If he goes off the board at 1-2, I have no problem with that. That's how good he is and how good he should be.
Okay.
And this offense that's going to be better. The offense being bad last year didn't hurt him. Bijan Robinson, I've talked about that a lot. A player I think can win Offensive Player of the Year. He's a guy that's going to go into the middle of your first round of your fantasy draft, and he can live up to expectations. Now, Jonathan Taylor, I like a lot. You saw after the contract dispute and some of the injuries last year, he really came on down the stretch. Now you get a dual threat backfield with him and Anthony Richardson. I think Jonathan Taylor can put up a lot of numbers. I like him in the back of the first round and that 110, that 111, that 1-9 range. Now, the player who I worry about who is going there, I'll be honest with you, is Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is a
Mm,
dynamic talent, right? We know what Gibbs is as far as his skill set, but he doesn't touch the football as much as a lot of these other running backs do. He's not going to have the touches that Breezon or Brees Hall will have, Jahmyr Gibbs or Jonathan Taylor. He relied a lot on touchdowns last year and receptions. And listen, receptions is something that we want, but touchdowns can't be predicted. David Montgomery is still a big part of that offense. So I'm a little bit pessimistic when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs and his first round
okay.
value, but he's a first round talent. I don't know if it's a first round situation he's in.
I didn't hear you mention Saquon at all in that mix, unless I
No.
missed it somehow. Where do you have him? And how do you think moving to Philly, getting better offensive line play, obviously, but being part of a more dynamic offense where everything isn't on his shoulders every single week, how does that affect his fantasy value?
I think when you look at Saquon, you're starting to see some splits that you're not really going to like. He did in 2022, he was at 4.4 yards per carry, that 1,300 yard season when he looked elite that year. And he came back last year, that yards per carry dipped under 4 in 14 games. That yard per catch actually went under 6 at one point. Last year, he got it back up to 6.8, but only on 41 receptions this year. Now, one of the things we do like about Barkley a lot this season is the fact that he's going into an offense where the offensive coordinator is going to be Kellen Moore. And what we've seen from Kellen Moore through Ezekiel Elliott's heyday is a running back that's going to be involved in the passing game and he's going to get a lot of touches. I think I would put more stock, though, in Jalen Hurts and the passing attack of the Philadelphia Eagles. So put it like this: if I'm on the board in round two, I am never going to start with Barkley as an RB1. So I'm not going to have like a Puka Nakua Saquon Barkley team. I'm going to take another wide receiver there. Now, could I
Okay.
start Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley? Ain't enough spice in that for me, so I probably won't end up doing that. So Saquon's a guy that I'm kind of not big on. I can see the upside with Kellen Moore being the offensive coordinator now, but he's a player where the trends to me say this is a player that's moving downward.
When we start to get into this second tier of running backs, maybe even low second, high third tier of backs, when we talk fantasy, I start to see James Cook's name come up.
Yeah,
And given what we may or may not expect from Buffalo, the departure of Stephon Diggs, but I think that just probably means more targets for Kincaid and Knox. I think Josh Allen really going to lean on his tight ends this year, even with the addition at wide receiver, the rookie. I can see James Cook having a big year if Buffalo does in fact look to take some of that stress off of Allen and say, no, we're going to lean into the run game as we did the second half of last year when it helped our offense find some footing and some success.
yeah. Cook is a player and a talent that I like a lot in James Cook. And what you see is his numbers are going in the right direction. Last year, 4.7 yards per carry on 237 carries. The yard per catch was actually over 10, which is very good on 44 receptions. Now, he only scored 6 touchdowns last year. And that's something that you kind of got to worry about because is Josh Allen going to be this team's goal line back? They drafted Ray Davis, a big physical runner out of the University of Kentucky, real good SEC runner to come in there and share some of that load with James Cook. He's a player that's not being drafted high. If you're a person that wants to go zero RB, maybe in rounds 4 or 5, you can target Cook as your RB1, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think that's something that can work well. But when it comes to Buffalo and James Cook, you worry about the goal line touches, and you just kind of just worry about Buffalo using a multitude of backs to get done what they need
Yeah.
to get done. Really, their weapon in the running game is really Josh Allen.
Are you willing to spend any significant draft capital on either one of them, with both of them being not question marks in so much as how talented they are, but question marks in what the workload is going to be from week to week?
Not high draft capital because
Yeah.
I would rather spend high draft capital on Tyreek Hill or Jaden Waddle because I know what they're going to be. With a chain and Mostert, you don't really know. And a chain's price tag is way too high right now. He's going in the second round of fantasy drafts. And I'm like, but you got a back that really does the same thing that you do that you can get for 4 to 6 rounds later. So why are we drafting a chain this early? Listen, the talent is there. Or you can say, well, the explosive plays. Well, Mostert has explosive plays too. Everybody on the Miami Dolphin roster is capable of explosive plays. The running back they drafted, Jalen Wright, he is known for explosive plays as well. So I think if I'm going to look at that Miami Dolphin team, I'm going to attack their pass catchers first. When it comes to the running backs, I'll wait till rounds 5 or 6 or 7 to go get Raheem Mostert because he's the same player as a chain, in my opinion.
So when we start to look at the value of the position as a whole, Corey, again, we kind of circle back around to where we started the conversation. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this is a totally different conversation when we talk about value of running
Yep.
backs in fantasy football. They were the first round. Now we're at a point where, like you said, there are zero running back teams, right? Teams that don't think running back until round 5, round 6 even. They go quarterback and wide receiver heavy, might even take a tight end before a running back. Where does just the overall value of the position lie, you think, this year? Do we
Yeah.
continue to devalue running backs?
I would go heavier on the wide receivers early in the draft because I think it's safer and I think you know exactly what you're getting. I'm more willing to start with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Marvin Harrison Jr. than I'm willing to start with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Saquon Barkley. The values come later at the running back position. Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, both Pittsburgh running backs, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Love Marshawn Lloyd in Green Bay. Expect him to take over and be a league winner, and then also Zach Moss and the aforementioned Raheem Mostert, some value you can get to be starting running backs after you build up on wide receivers.